Call the meeting to order with pledge of
Have to
allegiance.
send it to you immediately.
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Supervisor Milky is not here this evening.
I'll make a motion to nominate Trustee Thering as chair.
You have my support.
Can I decline for today?
Sure. Be interesting to see where that goes then.
Do you not want? Did you want?
Sure.
I'll nominate, I'd like to make a motion to nominate Treasurer Rogers as the interim supervisor.
You have my support.
Chair? Support, yeah.
Okay.
All in favor?
Oh, yes.
I
Who's chairing this meeting anyway?
Okay. I'm standing in. Clerk Cody, would you do roll call, please?
Treasurer Rogers?
Yes.
Trustee Lannon?
Yes.
Trustee Legg?
Yes.
Trustee Over?
Good evening.
Trustee Thering?
here.
And Clerk Cody here. Supervisor Monkey is excused.
We have an agenda in front of us.
Move to approve the agenda.
Support.
Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor of approving the agenda?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign? Okay, agenda is approved. We have no presentations this evening. So now is the time for public comment. It's restricted to 3 minutes regarding items on this agenda. If you wish to speak, please state your name and address.
I do have someone online, but they're not raising their hand.
Okay. Seeing no one come forward, we close public comment at 7:02. Next time for report board comments. We look at the retirement of certain positions. We know there's some openings, working on those.
Do we have any current applicants for the Planning Commission?
No,
No?
unfortunately. Okay. Next up is the board member reports. Oops, I've got the wrong order, sorry. We have a data center presentation by Community and Economic Developer Director Roger Nanny.
Good evening. Good evening. To come to you to give a different kind of presentation this evening. I was asked to talk a bit about data centers. For this presentation, that we're really going to focus on kind of some specific characteristics. Really look at from a land use development perspective and some of the operational characteristics of certain types of data centers. With that in mind, I love the background here of the original data center, the library in the background. But I'd like to talk about what a data center is. And I thought this was, all the various definitions I've seen, this one is basically a warehouse for digital information, a warehouse for all the things that we need to have digital information. So computers, the servers, memory, all those pieces that allow us to have digital information stored and used. It's really what a data center is all about. This is information infrastructure. This is the backbone of the internet. If you do almost anything on the internet, you're interacting with one or more data centers around the country or even around the world. As I think one of my other favorite comments, this is the cloud. We often think of when we talk about saving something in the cloud on our phone or on our computer, that this is some amorphous, anonymous place. When in reality, it's bricks and mortar and computer equipment and energy. And it's a data center. This is the cloud. So as we go through this, we're going to talk about a number of things. One of the things we'll talk about is some challenges. I've noted kind of a top 10 list of challenges associated with local regulation of data centers. As we go through, we'll talk through them all. This first one, I think, is worth sharing right at the beginning. And this is a new land use for us. This is a new type of development in Michigan. New is in quotes because in reality we've had data centers for a long time in various formats. And we'll talk more about why that is. But you've got libraries. Libraries have had a data center. It's not digital, but we've had digital data centers for a long time. But because of state incentives, in particular some tax incentives that were adopted into law in 2024 that remove sales tax provisions related to a lot of the types of equipment that would go into data centers. Michigan became a magnet for these types of facilities. When you add those tax incentives, which are significant, to the fact we have relatively cheap land as compared to some of the places that these centers were going in the southwest part of the country, and we have an abundance of water that other places of the country don't have. Michigan has become a magnet for these larger data center installations. So it kind of led to a bit of a gold rush environment over the last year or so. As we've seen kind of the news coming out with various large projects coming into the state. So this is a data center. This is a big data center. This is one we'll be talking more about. This one, the source for this didn't give me a square footage, but looking at in the picture, you can see some cars and some other things that are kind of scalable. It's probably about 500,000 square feet of space in that, what looks like a very large industrial building. And we'll talk more about some of the details there in just a minute. This is also a data center. This is a whole different scale. This is about, this building that this is pictured in is about 1,200 square feet total. So small garage, essentially, in size, or a very small office building. What you see there in black are 2 rows of server racks with servers and cooling equipment associated with them. They're occupying about 450 square feet of that 1,200 square feet. The rest is currently is available. I'm standing taking that picture is all just open space. So it's about maybe 45% occupied at this point with servers and equipment. You can kind of maybe see in the picture there, it's a row of racks. In each rack, there's a cooling unit and a rack where there's computer equipment in that rack. And each rack might be, let's say, about 3 feet wide total when you include the cooling equipment. And it's about my height in height. And even one of those racks, if it was simply in a closet or in a back office somewhere, that would be a data center unto itself, simply because it's a collection of computer equipment, servers, and memory that's providing services generally remotely. That's a data center. So even at that very small scale in the closet, it's a data center. So we'll talk more about this one as well in a minute. But I want to kind of give an idea of size, just some kind of references to size, and I have to apologize right off the bat here. On the right-hand side, there's a reference from Mel Brooks' movie Spaceballs. But I mentioned earlier the hyperscale data center, that big one. Hyperscale is kind of the industry name for those. I think ludicrous speed is a much better industry name for these very large data centers. So I couldn't help but include it here. But you can kind of see relative. These can be as small as something in a closet. They can be in a back office. They can be similar to what you saw earlier, where a small building space or a larger building space. In this case, the larger one refers to buildings up to about 50,000 square feet. I can tell you those numbers are not set in stone in any way. In some communities, a 10,000 square foot building would be considered a very large data center. In kind of a very rural place, 10,000 square foot building is significant. In other places, 50,000 square feet would still be kind of on the small side for this kind of facility. But on the large side of that ludicrous speed end of things, you can see 50,000, 500,000, 2.5 million. There's a data center project that apparently has received at least initial approval out in Utah for 40,000 acres of building space.
Holy cow.
Ultimately. There's another one in Nevada that is, I believe, somewhere, it's like 7 or 8 million square feet in several buildings. So here in Michigan, we have at least one that's over 1 million square feet. So big numbers for these things. All right. So the key with the data center development is Michigan provides some incentives for it. But frankly, it's also because we keep using the internet. We keep using more and more of big data type applications and computer games and video conferencing and all the other things that have come since COVID. Amazon, if you buy anything on Amazon, you're using these big data centers. Microsoft, Google, any of these sites, you're using that type of equipment. So there's a need for these kinds of facilities to support that. So this is a map of the Lower Peninsula of Michigan. This map is not current. It does not show data center projects that are either in development review or under construction. But it kind of gives an idea of at least where we are, or where we were probably about a year and a half ago. And you see 77 existing data centers around the state in the Lower Peninsula. See, most of them are kind of in a corridor between Metro Detroit and Grand Rapids, but there's some outside of that. There's one there. You can kind of see the middle of the state. It's overlapping the word Michigan. And if we lifted that one off the map, the label for the city of Mount Pleasant would be there. That is the data center that you saw in the picture earlier. That's in the city of Mount Pleasant. And so we'll be talking about that one more just in a moment. So as I said, there are more in process in various parts of the state. Southwest Michigan, Microsoft has a big data center project. In Saline Township in Washtenaw County, there's a very troublesome data center project that OpenAI has involved in. That's the million-plus square foot, multi-billion-dollar project that we may talk a little bit more, but that's under construction right now. About 200 acres of land that will be occupied by this facility. So let's talk a little bit about the types of data centers. There are various ways to classify data centers. We may talk a little bit about power usage. That's the way the industry likes to classify them, is by power need. We talk about square footage. We just did kind of talk about size, building size. This is by, you might say, by type, by operational character. First data center type we'll talk about is an enterprise data center. This is one where it's one company, one enterprise that basically all of the equipment in that facility is for that one company. So this might be a hospital. Central Michigan University has a data center that's entirely for Central Michigan University use. So that's an enterprise data center. That one wasn't on that map, but it does exist. But this is one company and their own facilities that they need for their own use within the company. That's an enterprise data center. It can be small, like a closet or a back office, or it can be very large in a freestanding building. The second item here, the type is a co-location data center. This is one, essentially think of this as multifamily residential for data. This is a multi-tenant. This is a facility where space is leased out to various entities, individuals or companies, governments, to be able to have their own servers in that space. So the power is provided, the lights are provided, the security is provided, but each entity generally would maintain their own equipment within that environment. And so it's multi-tenant use by several different companies. That's the type of arrangement that the township uses. So you'll see that a little bit further in just a moment. Again, these can be small or large. They can be small as a few hundred square feet, or they can be as large as 1 million square feet. Amazon Web Services is essentially, although they're giant facilities, is really a co-location data center because they essentially rent space to various other companies to make use for storage and processing. Right. So this will then bring us to, get it right. No, it doesn't want to move. They actually jumped on me a couple, because I pressed the button, of course.
Wrap her up.
So here's the last type, hyperscale. Tara said, don't get impatient. Hyperscale data center, we talked about it. This is the big one. This is that giant one you saw or pictured earlier. This is the ludicrous scale facility. This is the one that's the backbone of the internet. This is the AI data center. These facilities are providing cloud services. They're providing what's called software as a service, or infrastructure as a service. If you use any software where you have a license, but that software is not actually on your computer, or maybe only has a small part of the software on the computer, and you need to use access the internet to use all of the software, you're using one of these big data centers. The software is sitting on that server at the data center, and you're connecting through the internet to make use of it. Adobe, a lot of the Adobe products, they like to use a licensing process and keep the software on their system. Go back now to our small co-location data center. This is another view of that data center in Mount Pleasant in the city. This is CMS, our internet provider, our IT provider. They own this and maintain it. If you see in the picture down the lower right-hand side of the picture, you'll see a little asterisk there. That's about where our servers are that the township has. They're in the lower part of that rack. Right in front of you, the thing closest to you, that is kind of tall and narrow there, that's an air conditioner. It's a chiller or air conditioner unit. There are a series of those along that row, and another series along the opposite side that keep that equipment cool. Even at this small scale, it's about 450, 500 square feet of equipment, generates a tremendous amount of heat. In between the two racks, there's a space there where essentially heat is contained and it creates a circulation pattern. So if you open that glass door there towards the right-hand side of the picture, basically you get a wall of heat out of it. That heat is circulating up and around to keep that, so it circles up, around, cools off, and then goes back through the equipment to keep it cool. This site is using, as a power rating, CMS estimates about 40 kilowatts. Kilowatt is 1,000 watts. We're talking different scales with wattage. We're not going to talk a lot about power, but I want to kind of give you an idea of scale. So this is 40,000 watts of power usage. This one has a good bit of room for growth, but it also has essentially no impact on its neighbors. There is a emergency generator outside. It's well screened, and in fact, if you walk by the site, you wouldn't know it's there. You wouldn't know what this building is used for if you walk by it. There's no impact from this scale of operation. So here's that big one again. This is from Virginia, Loudoun County, Virginia, home to a whole bunch of data centers, a lot of them associated with the federal government. I don't know if this one is or not. This says that maybe about 500,000 square feet of space, could be a little more. You can see it's like kind of it looks like an industrial building. The dark rectangles you see all over that roof are very likely generators. And then along the right-hand side of the building in this picture, you'll see a whole row of, there are dozens of generators, there's dozens of heat exhaust vents as well to let the hot air out of this building. And then finally, along the right-hand side, parked there, are dozens of very large industrial scale chillers, air conditioning units, that are all operating basically 24/7 to provide, maintain the temperature in this building and allow that equipment to not overheat. So that's the kind of scale we're looking at in terms of power usage. This is certainly multi-megawatt power range. This is probably hundreds of megawatts of power to operate this facility. Probably doesn't get up to the gigawatt stage. Megawatt is millions of watts. Gigawatt is billions of watts. But we're already that unit I mentioned in Utah, 40,000 acres. They're talking, I think it's more than 1 gigawatt of energy power usage. So that's more than 1 billion watts. which is actually more than the entire state of Utah currently uses. Just to give you a scale for that thing. The other thing, if you'll note here, if you look carefully in the picture, there's a couple of parking lots on either side. They're very small. There are very few cars in those parking lots. I don't know if this is a peak time for the employees or not, but these run 24/7. And you can only see a few cars in the parking lot, and the parking lot's barely the size of a dentist office parking lot. As big as these facilities are, they do not generate employment. I don't know how many are here, but I do know of a case of a 200,000 square foot data center that was proposed. And the folks that proposed it said, although they would have a whole bunch of people to construct it, in the end it would operate with about a dozen people total. That's it for a 200,000 square foot facility. So now we'll talk a few more of these challenges. Keep on our list. The first one on, number 2 on the list here is noise and vibration. Remember all those generators on the roof. Remember all those industrial scale chiller air conditioning units sitting outside the building. Those all generate noise. And in addition to that, the equipment inside the building, all those, in your computer you often have a fan. And it runs, the computer gets warm, it turns on, and it kind of, you can feel it, and feel a little vibration from it. Well, imagine the fans in larger server units that are trying to cool that equipment. You put all that together inside the building, and you get a lot of vibration that can come in kind of a lower, we have 2 noises. High frequency noise from these generators and air conditioner units and the vent fans, and then kind of a very low frequency noise or vibration that comes from that equipment inside, and maybe also from the air conditioners and other things, have some vibration associated with it. It is enough cumulatively to potentially affect folks well off the property. In fact, in some cases there have been reports of noise impacts as much as a mile away from the big data center operations. So one of the key things to look at, one of the key challenges, is to make sure that the developer of these facilities are providing air gaps for the equipment so that sound can't travel, providing base separation to keep the vibration from getting into the ground, into the foundation, and also, of course, screening and noise dampening for equipment that might be outside. The high frequency noise in some cases has been recorded as 70 and 80 and 90 decibels even off the property on certain data center sites that were not well designed. And at that scale, there's no conversation. You can't have a conversation. And at that scale, on a continuous basis, it starts to affect your hearing, just as hearing is affected for the folks working in industrial plants that have that similar constant high frequency noise level. So that's a big impact. Electromagnetic interference is another one. If you've ever been listening to an AM radio in your car and driven by especially an older electric vehicle, but even newer ones do it, and had that AM radio suddenly go completely to static, you know about electromagnetic interference. Imagine 1 million electric vehicles all concentrated together. That's what you have with this kind of a facility. It has great potential to impact the air around it with that kind of radiation. That kind of radiation is not dangerous. Electromagnetic radiation is troublesome because it can have impacts. I'm not saying that we're irradiating anybody, but it is a type of radiation that is emanating out. And it certainly can have impacts on the neighbors. And here again, there are ways to mitigate that, but it requires a developer to actually take the steps to do that. And so from an ordinance perspective, it takes us making sure that that kind of language is in our ordinance to address that type of impact. Take just a moment to talk about scaling. The types of data centers operate differently in terms of how they scale, how they grow. For the enterprise and co-location data centers, they essentially scale up by replacing, modernizing equipment. A good example of that gives the Township. When we chose to move our servers to CMS, to their data center site, we also upgraded those servers from what we had at the time. The equipment we had was was older, it was starting to get close to its natural operating lifetime. And we also had need for more processing power, more memory than that those existing servers had. So we upgraded to go into that facility. Similarly, that happens with other sites. Essentially, it grows organically over time in capacity as older equipment is replaced. Interestingly, at hyperscale, the very large facilities tend to scale out. They simply add more. They might actually use older equipment longer because they can network it so that even older memory chips and older processors working together can do the job that needs to be done. Just as you would network together a bunch of computers to try to do certain kinds of processing activities. So those hyperscalers tend to scale out, and that's why they keep getting bigger. And so they might keep equipment longer as a result. But essentially, at the hyperscale level, it's essentially needing ever more space, ever more energy to continue to do what they need to do. If anybody's downloaded a Microsoft Office product, you know that every time there's a new version, it's twice as big as the old version. And so they simply need more processing space, more memory. All right, more challenges. A couple here that are important to us from the perspective of protecting farmland. We're both an urban community and a rural community. And one of the challenges with the very large data centers is they like farm sites, they like agricultural land. Not necessarily because it's farm sites, but because that's where the largest high voltage electrical transmission lines are located. They tend to go through very rural areas. And that's what they need. They need that power. The site that's down in Washtenaw County, Township, that I mentioned earlier, that's exactly why they located there. In fact, the site, if it's fully built out, there's a high voltage line that runs through that area, and they are predicting that they will use all of the power that currently is running through that line when it's fully built out. They will use everything. So essentially, the power company is going to have to find more power to have to serve other customers along that transmission line. But farmland and loss of farmland is a big deal with these facilities. And we'll talk a little bit more about other agricultural impacts in a minute. Energy consumption is the other one. Our utility companies, DTE Energy and Consumers Energy, have been shutting down coal plants. Almost all of them have been shut down. One is being forced to stay open on the west side of the state right now. And they've claimed, oh yes, we can continue to provide power, but they were making that claim before these data centers came in. And now they're claiming that they can provide the massive amounts of power the data centers need and still be able to serve the rest of us, even though they actually have fewer operating plants than they had in past years, even 10 years ago. I'm sure there's magic involved somewhere. I don't know how they're going to do it, but anyway, there is potential for impacting us, both in terms of rates and in terms of capacity to serve their other customers if these big data center projects come in. And so that's a piece of the puzzle, is to look at how that would work. I think I mentioned that we had a data center project look at this area a few years ago. 200,000 square foot one, that's the example I mentioned. They were kind of kicking the tires, and they were kicking the tires of consumers' energy, because that was power was important. It was really their number one need. And what they found from consumers' energy was that the capacity to serve them was not there. Currently, this area of Isabella County simply does not have the capacity and power infrastructure to support a large-scale data center. Obviously, that can change in the future, but that's the case right now. But there are certainly other areas of the state where they're looking at that issue of energy consumption. A couple more impacts, some big ones here. Heating and cooling, essentially. We'll talk about cooling first, actually. These very large data centers typically are liquid cooled, water cooled. That's the most efficient way to get the heat out of out of those facilities. They run water through cooling lines through the facility, and typically that water is pumped back into the ground to release the heat energy, and then pumped back out of the ground to run through the system again. In the past, it was an open system where they were essentially discarding the heated water. Now, most of these data centers are claiming anyway to be using a closed system. It still may require millions of gallons to make the system work, but won't require millions of gallons a day necessarily, which is some of the older systems we're doing. But even a closed loop system loses water in the system. It has to discard water in certain times. So it is going to be drawing from groundwater resources or from public water resources. But also as part of that, interestingly, in using the ground to radiate that heat energy out, these facilities actually heat up the ground. And there have been studies done and measurements taken where the ambient ground temperature, as much as 300, 400, 500 feet away from the data center, can be elevated by several degrees. That's not a quarter degree, not a half a degree, by several degrees, 3, 5 degrees above the ambient ground temperature around it. And that's because of the data center operation. That kind of change really has an impact. It has an impact on wildlife, it has an impact on agriculture, all sorts of potential impacts. And when you add, as we saw earlier with that unit that had the vents, the heat vents going out the roof, when you add the raising the ambient air temperature, these heat impacts are significant. You may have heard of the heat island effect for large cities with lots of pavement, lots of building roofs. In the summertime, the sun, the exposure to the sun heats those things up, and in cities the temperature may be 5 or 10 degrees warmer than the surrounding countryside. They just call it heat island. Well, these data centers alone are creating, in some cases, major city-level heat islands around them because of the need to remove heat from their system. So the last three here, just a few more hazardous materials of pollution. Like any industrial activity, there's potential for pollution. As pumping water around, pumping water back into the ground, you have potential to harm groundwater resources, no matter how you design the system. Emergency response and fire protection is significant. Many of these are going into rural areas with volunteer fire departments. We're fortunate here to have a professional fire department, but in most cases, no fire department in its existing capacity is ready to take on a 200 or 500 or a million square foot industrial building with all of that computer equipment, all the potential fire sources and such that would be in there. And so there's definitely a need for training, a need for additional equipment to try to make sure that we can adequately protect those facilities and the people in them and the areas around them. And then finally, the last one I'll share here is decommissioning. These buildings are very specific, they're very specialized in their design. It's an industrial building, at whatever scale it may be. It's ultimately an industrial building, maybe 30 or 40 feet tall, interior clear space, big clear building space inside, but with all those generators on the roof, all those chillers on the side, all that wiring and such, all that equipment on the inside, they are very specialized. And all that has a lifespan. And while we certainly hope that if a facility like that's operating, we want it to continue to operate, be part of the community. But like anything else, there may come a day when it no longer is a viable operation. Technology in this area is changing amazingly rapidly. The capacity for memory chips, the processing speeds and capacity, all that continues to evolve very rapidly. And so who knows, maybe 5 years from now, everything really will be on a cloud. Everything will be stored in the air, stored on beams of light or something, or stored in space if the folks at SpaceX have anything to do with it. They're looking at putting these data centers in orbit. And then we won't need these big buildings on the ground. And so one of the questions is what happens to them? When we deal with the big solar energy facilities like the ones that went into the north of us, of the wind turbines. You know, we ask about decommissioning, and we get decommissioning bonds, and we get guarantees, and what's the cost going to be, and what is the future use? And similarly, we need to do these facilities, because otherwise we could end up with a white elephant, a giant white elephant that we really get has no purpose, or would take millions and millions and millions of dollars to repurpose. So that's another piece of the puzzle for us to consider. So I bet at this point, you're probably kind of worried, because we've had some pretty hard things. And so now I want to bring in, well, essentially the pirates. This is the piracy of data centers, and that's cryptocurrency mining. This is Bitcoin mining. And this is, we'll call it the 11th, it's just a bonus item. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. Is everybody familiar with Bitcoin and other digital currencies? Yeah. What they call cryptocurrency mining is really solving puzzles that are designed into the cryptocurrency, that if you solve the puzzle, you're rewarded by a new Bitcoin. And it actually creates new currency through this data processing thing. And that data processing requires a lot of memory, a lot of processing power, and so that it can be done in one computer, but the fastest way and the most efficient way is to do it at a much larger scale. And that gets us back to these data centers. And so this is not a major issue in Michigan, but there are actually a couple of sites in the UP that were put in. At least one I've been told was put in without really good oversight. And like the other data centers, impacts we've been talking about, it's having a lot of those impacts in the neighborhood: noise, vibration, all those kinds of things. So it's an area to be aware of. It's an area where, like I said, this is really a data center that only provides value to one person, and that's whoever it is that's going to win that Bitcoin when the puzzle is solved. So with that, coming to the end here, and next steps. After all I've said, I'm going to say this. We talked early on about some developers wanting to put pressure and trying to get the communities to act hastily. I'm going to say that we don't do that. There's no need to be hasty on anything with regards to this. I mentioned earlier that for us, our area here does not currently have the power resources for these data centers. So I don't see a current need. Many communities have adopted moratoriums, a temporary period of time when those types of facilities are simply not allowed to apply for approval in order for that community to build an ordinance. We could do that, but frankly, I don't believe there's real value in it right now, or need. This is something that we can act with thought, with deliberation, and to respond to this new land use. And we certainly should respond to it. Noted here, I think the first bullet point just talked about watching what's going on with power. The consumers and ITC, our electrical transmission grid, are looking at expanding their networks for these high voltage power lines. That's a very long process, a years long process. So just keep an eye on that. But in terms of our kind of a response, I think the first response really is to look at developing a zoning ordinance amendment that specifically adds enterprise data centers and co-location data centers into the ordinance as allowable uses. These are things that could easily be in our business district or industrial district without causing anybody any difficulty. Like I said, they at smaller scale, they do not really have significant impacts. And so we simply put the standards in the ordinance that address the scale and address what impacts there may be from that type of activity to ensure they're a good fit for their neighbors. And then with that, kind of a secondary item would be to continue to look at and ultimately develop some regulatory response in the zoning ordinance related to these hyperscale or ludicrous speed data centers. We will need to deal with that in the ordinance at some point, but as I said, I'm fully comfortable with saying that this is something we can do with deliberation and care and not with haste. So that brings me to the end of the presentation. This presentation has been posted on the Township website. It's under the Board of Trustees in the same place where the agenda packet is located.
Okay.
So if you want to see the slides again, you can go there. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
That was a lot.
It's a lot, yeah.
So I just mentioned that I know this has, I happened to see a township meeting from up in the Traverse City area. And it generated a lot of community interest.
Yeah.
So they had some very full boardrooms talking about data centers. And I know there's folks up there who have invested a lot of time, energy, and intelligence in researching pros and cons of this. And so there's folks out there who have, or are at least creating the wheel of understanding about the pros and cons of data centers. And folks up in the Traverse City region are very seriously studying it. So, you know, good reference for us as we may need.
Other thoughts, other questions?
That was a very good presentation.
It was, thank you.
You're welcome. And I will tell you, I talked about other places. I mentioned Southwest Michigan, one of the sites for these data centers. It happens that one of the sites is at least partly in Union Township in Branch County. And we have redirected about a half dozen people that have called very concerned about the data center coming to Union Township as a result of headlines that are on the internet
Right.
that weren't real clear. So it certainly, yes, there's great community interest, and there should be.
I don't know if you mentioned the word, but some of the communities are establishing moratoriums of
Yep.
sorts for periods of time on any movement, and that actually
And
comes to fruition.
we certainly can. It's something we would do in good consultation with our township attorney. I don't believe it's warranted at this point. And mostly because of what I know about the power
Construction
situation.
concerns.
That we just don't really have a power resource here that they do have available elsewhere. So, but it's certainly, if there's interest on the board's part, certainly that can give direction on that and look into a moratorium. But I believe at this point we can simply move ahead with deliberate speed to address these in the zoning ordinance.
Well, it's out there, so we need to know what's going on and be prepared, yeah.
Didn't you say you went to a road commission meeting where they were talking about like improving or upgrading our power lines to
Yes,
facilitate this?
yes. It's talked that would go through here.
Yeah,
And that's-
ITC, the electrical transmission grid folks are talking about it. They're talking about adding to their network and be coming through the county somewhere.
Yeah.
Going between Bay City and Ludington. But that, as I said, that's years
Yeah.
before that would ever come to pass.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Nanny.
Yeah, thanks for bringing it
Thank you.
forward.
Next on our agenda, board member reports. Mr. Alford?
Planning Commission met last evening in this room. 3 final site plans were approved, although there were conditions. The final site plan for the City of Mount Pleasant Water Treatment Plant on Lincoln Road, and then the island site on Broomfield. Just a lighting challenge there. They had 11-foot foot candles, thank you. And the limit is 10, so a little revision,
What is a foot candle?
and that will be fine. And that, right?
What is a foot candle?
It's the brightness that that you get. So, yeah, their lights were going to be a little bit too bright. Yeah. And then the final site plan for the Central Michigan Christian Academy down Lincoln Road. That was passed with conditions. It passed 5-2. Unusual for the Planning Commission to disagree, but last night on that issue it did. And several things that they will need to do, working with Rodney and Peter to get to that final site plan approval. And then the Heirloom Grove Agritourism Facility had a few conditions on their final site plan, but things are progressing quite nicely there. So
Okay.
that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Trustee Lanham?
Yeah, I had the opportunity to attend 2 meetings since we last met. The first one was on July 14th, the Isabella County Board of Commissioners Finance Committee / Committee of the Whole work session. And so what they're doing is they're going through the working sessions to pretty much lay things out for the board meeting that takes place the next week. So their board meetings are pretty quick,
Right.
but their work sessions is where the work's being done usually. And so what they do is they consider approving things to move to that board meeting. And some of those things that took place where they're looking at considering approving a building inspection fee adjustment, a tweak upward in cost for building inspections is possibly going to happen. The Isabella County Sheriff's Office is hoping to get approval to purchase 3 new vehicles for their uses. And they're considering approving the county day treatment contract, having an extension with McBride Quality Care. They seem to believe that works well, and for a 2% increase, they're able to extend that into September of 2028. So they're hoping for that. Out at Herrick Park, they're hoping to purchase a recreation station, kind of along the lines of what Union Township has in place,
Recreation.
like our exercise
Oh,
station
exercise, okay, yep.
thing out at Herrick Park. And they're going to consider approving roughly $48,000 to continue the remonumentation grant, meaning the Register of Deeds tries to identify physically the corners of properties, and they're in the process of going through many properties in the county there. So they're continuing on and going to hopefully appropriate some money for that. And they're hoping to increase the state grant for the foster grandparent and senior companion program that is through the Commission on Aging. And as we're going to be doing tonight here, they also went through their mid-year budget adjustment update.
Okay.
So that's what took place at the county. Also had the opportunity to attend the Isabella County chapter of Michigan Townships Association's quarterly meeting, which took place July 15th at Denver Township. The main presenter was Sheriff Mike Main, and he was talking about the public safety revenue sharing monies that have been appropriated, which actually I believe appears in our agenda conversation. And he was, hoping to get support from the various townships to utilize their portions of the money. 75% of the monies in that sharing program can go towards policing type work, and 25% of it is allowed to go to fire or other public safety measures. And the sheriff went through a wish list of some of the things he hopes the townships will come together and support him on. Also, State Rep Jerry Nyer was there. He just quickly mentioned that the state budget is completed and has shrunk $3 to $4 billion from the previous state budget. And then County Commissioner Jim Marino spoke and was talking about the state home property and how the contract's written for uses of it, how it can be used, hoping to generate some discussion on figuring out how to be able to turn it into some taxable property. So trying to generate some discussion there. Also, Union Township is paid up in full on their dues with the Michigan Township through Isabella County. And Union Township has had attendance at all the quarterly meetings of this year.
Good. Thank you, trustee Leanna.
Yep.
Trustee Lake?
I attended the July meeting of the Cultural and Recreation Commission on July 15th. The big item on the agenda was that we had Mr. Nanny come and talk to us about some of the options we have regarding an ongoing project to create a driveway for the Renaissance Academy to help alleviate some of the traffic on Isabella Road and how it backs up at pick up and drop off. So we discussed different options as far as easements versus sale of land, and we're going to continue to investigate and discuss what direction we want to go as a body. We also approved a parking lot repair project, which will basically resurface the parking lot, restripe it just as it is right now, but without the potholes. So that'll be great. And then the ice arena is closed down for the rest of the until next season, which starts in the fall, and they're doing some renovations because nothing's really been done since the 1990s, and it kind of reflects that. So there's going to be some new paint, some new bleachers. The bleachers are going to be shifted down and new bleachers are going to be added, and they're redoing the locker rooms because apparently they're in not so great shape. So that was done through donations by the Maury Foundation. So, and then we're about to finish the Martin Arena camera installation that we approved a few months ago, and they're going to start on the Maury Court side of things in August. So.
You did not use the word.
Zamboni.
There it is.
Yes. There was no Zamboni-related discussion at this last meeting. However, there are three strong candidates for the ice arena manager position. I'm sure one of them has Zamboni driving experience.
Okay.
There you go.
Nice. Trustee Thering?
Nothing to report.
Clerk Cody? Nothing. I attended the Isabella County Road Commission meeting. It is discussed the fact that several culverts at county drain locations in Denver and Wise Township are in poor condition, rusting horribly. Road Commission is debating closing the roads in those locations. County Drain Commissioner is responsible for those, but unwilling to repair or apply for 2%. The Road Commission will probably contact the townships and ask them to apply for 2% to help the situations. That's Denver and Wise. And they also discussed the Maury-Rensen Road, and it's not a public road, so that's part of the thing you guys are working on about easements or purchase or whatever. And they're working with Eric at the Tribe to try and help move it along. They mentioned that it's wet, there's cattails, and it would be extensive cost. We know that'd be extensive cost. One big thing is MDOT got the funding for the Somerton and Pickard roundabout. Okay, uh-oh, my computer won't shut down. The consent agenda, who had warrants this week?
I did. Everything looked great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, okay, any discussion? Do we discuss the consent agenda? No?
Motion to approve.
Support?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Same, opposed, same sign? Motion carries. New business. 11A, discussion about finance 2026 second quarter budget amendment. Manager Sudra, will you bring this up, please?
Thank you and good evening, everyone. There is a report on page 19 of your agenda packet that speaks to the recommended budget amendment. This is our fourth budget amendment. We've had a couple very small item-specific amendments when we approve those items. We've also had 2 larger ones from a more quarterly basis review. This is so while it's budget amendment number 4, it's also referred to as the second quarter budget amendment. All the amendments are addressing the general fund, the fire fund, special assessment fund, sewer, and water fund. I'll just briefly touch on a few highlights for each of these funds. In the general fund, on the revenue side, we're increasing some revenue as it relates to property tax refunds, Michigan Tax Tribunal cases where we're likely to have to pay back a few dollars there. State grant for public safety. Grant requires 75% of the funds be used for law enforcement, 25% for non-law enforcement public safety activities. We're recognizing in the general fund the non-law enforcement activities right now. We can tie those pretty directly to building inspector and rental code enforcement officer activities, and we will be looking for opportunities to partner with other law enforcement agencies for the balance of that money. State shared revenue, we're adjusting $65,600 to foot with the current state projections that they provide us. We're also recognizing in the general fund $32,500, which was a 2% tribal award to the township that we're using for the signage project that we're partnering with the road commission on. On the expense side, our new assessor employee arrived. There hasn't been anything done to that office in years. $2,000 to upgrade that office, some desk and filing cabinets. On the public works side, to offset the revenue from the tribe's $32,500, we have the expenditure for the signage project on the expense side. In the public works department, we're reducing that $375,000. That's the Mission Creek Pathway project that we've been talking about for a number of years. That's going to be delayed again till 2027 next year. So we're removing it from this year's budget. It would naturally flow to fund balance, and as part of that budget, this budget amendment, we're also looking to commit a portion of the fund balance to that activity, $375,000. So while it's flowing to fund balance, it will be committed, and that's based on a resolution that the board approved several years ago related to Union Township's participation in that project. The net effect of all of these amendments for the general fund is to increase the projected year-end fund balance by a little over $306,000 compared to the existing amended budget. On the fire side, the fire fund side, again, some property tax revenues related to MTTs, and that's really the only one that needs to be mentioned, I think. That will decrease the projected year-end fund balance in the fire fund by a little over $2,000. Special assessment fund, these are more technical in nature. People prepay their multi-year special assessments. When they do that, we need to account for that prepayment in the current fiscal year. That has a negligible impact on the fund balance in that fund. I will point out that in the special assessment fund, there is approximately $400,000 of fund balance that we use to front end the cash needed when a special assessment project comes to us. And we are in the process of working with, I want to say it's Country Squire Estates. They're circulating an informal petition. They've done that already, sent it back to us. And so there'll be some action item to move that process forward. You may recall from start to finish, it's a 15-step process to ultimately approve a special assessment roll. That looks like it would be in the amount of about $290,000 for those roads over in that subdivision. So we have that fund balance for those kinds of citizen-initiated paving projects paid for with a special assessment. On the sewer fund, have development on Bluegrass connection fee, $55,000. We're increasing revenue into the sewer fund. On the expenditure side, the biggest one is a secondary treatment equipment, $30,000. It's an aerator repair. In terms of fund impact, the sewer fund, the net impact of this budget amendment would be to increase projected year-end fund balance by $17,000 after you net everything out. On the water fund, we are closing out the federal drinking water state revolving fund project this year. That needs to be completed this year. There's $350,000 that we're recognizing as revenue this year because we're anticipating spending that this year to close out that almost $11 million project. On the expense side, there was a retirement this year, and there's leave bank payouts, so we're amending the budget to account for that on the water side of things. Maintenance, $25,000 we're increasing. You may recall a Bluegrass repair that we had to do related to some water main breaks earlier in the year. We're increasing the budget by $25,000. And then the biggest one on the expense side is to recognize the $350,000 and some change for the state project. The net impact of all that is increasing the fund balance in the water fund by a little over $33,000. There is a resolution that we're recommending that you adopt. You don't need to read it in its entirety. And then on page 24 is the worksheet that we put together. And what we're showing you here is, if approved, this is what the amended budget would then end up looking like.
Okay.
And I'll point out, in the four columns of numbers, the first column you'll see $375,000 Mission Creek Parkway. That was previously assigned. That's a category in the accounting world. We have moved that to committed because the board did approve a resolution committing that money several years ago. So that's just a technical change. So with that, if you have any questions, be happy to address those. The administration then is recommending that the Board of Trustees approve this proposed budget amendment for the funds that I've listed. Be happy to answer any questions you have.
So the only thing I was looking for clarification on is both in the general fund and the fire fund, when you talk about the Michigan Tax Tribunal and expected fund due to case stipulated, is that a particular case, or is that, could be many cases? I just wasn't.
It could be
clear on
many cases. We have, I want to say three, maybe four. We always have 3, maybe 4 active
Right.
tax tribunal cases. In the main, they revolve around student apartment housing. So that's where those are coming from.
Okay, I just kind of needed a little refresher what that really was relating to. Thanks.
Any more discussion?
I'll make a motion to adopt the below resolution for the fiscal year 2026 budget amendment number 4, the second quarter amendments to the general fund, fire fund, special assessment fund, sewer fund, and water fund.
Support?
Motion on the floor. Any discussion? All those in favor of accepting this resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And do we need a roll call for that, or no?
No.
Okay, thank you. All right. Next is B, discussion, Mr. Nanny considers section of OHM advisors to the successful bidder for the athletic fields feasibility study. Mr. Nanny?
There's a report that begins on page 25 of your agenda packet. This is a feasibility study that we're recommending be done. We received a grant from the Convention and Visitors Bureau to pay for this. The idea, and coming out of the Convention Bureau, there's a need in the area for additional athletic fields. They may service softball, Little League, soccer,
Right.
whatnot. The primary need that's often identified here locally is the baseball, because of the nature of the community and the Central Michigan history and their strong baseball program. In the fall of 2025, the Convention Visitors Bureau awarded the township $20,000. They called a destination development grant for this project, and the intent is to try to identify where additional athletic facilities could be located within the community. And in this case, we're going to be looking specifically at Union Township, because for us to manage it, it really needs to involve our township.
Right.
So as to complete a feasibility study for for new athletic field development, it would provide a roadmap, so to speak, identify locations that might be that might work for this type of facility. This is just feasibility. There's no commitments being made in terms of what we do with the report and how we move forward. But to the extent that we ever did, there is clearly a market and demand for state and regional tournaments to locate at different places throughout the state, and this area could become one of those locations. In June, the Community and Economic Development Department advertised and distributed a request for proposal. 4 bids were received. Of the 4 that were received, only OHM advisors kept their proposal to the scope that was fairly narrow in our request for proposal. Other proposals, while they handled and addressed that scope, they also provided other things that they could do for us that we weren't asking for. And all 4 were responsive. We're recommending OHM advisors for this work. We also invited Chris Rowley, who's the executive director of the Convention and Visitors Bureau, to review this recommendation, the proposal from OHM. She supports it, and it's anticipated that we would have this study done by the end of the year if approved. So it's grant funds, feasibility study for expanding athletic field offerings in the community. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
So, did you indicate this would be property owned by the township or the ball, games or would be under management of the township, the oversight?
No, I didn't indicate any of that.
Okay, so,
This study will be looking at where facilities could go. We don't own that kind of land, so.
right, so we're not talking about just looking at township-owned property. We're looking throughout the whole township.
Correct. And if those parcels were identified, you'd need a whole nother several years probably to bring it to fruition. You'd have to buy the property. Somebody'd have to buy it. Doesn't have to be the township.
Okay.
Somebody's got to operate it. May or may not be township. You know, all those things are. This is just a feasibility study.
Thanks.
I'd like to move to select OHM Advisors as the successful bidder to conduct the feasibility study for the potential development of a group of new tournament-friendly athletic fields and related support facilities as specified in Phase 1 and Phase 2 of the OHM work plan and deliverables for a not-to-exceed fee of $27,300 and to authorize the township manager to sign a service agreement with OHM Advisors for the project.
Support.
Motion's on the floor. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next up is a discussion of our meeting start time. And you want to start that?
We have no paperwork for this.
Right.
It was indicated at the last meeting by the board that they were interested in having some discussion on possibly changing the start time of the meeting. That's what this item is reserved for.
Yes, okay. Any input, thoughts, discussion?
May I be excused for 1 second?
Just really.
Okay.
Um,
Before we get to a deep discussion.
I'd be open to moving it up just a little bit, like 6:30. I know Milky said 6 was pushing it a
Right.
little too early for him, but he said he'd be agreeable to 6:30. But, that's my thought.
Okay, any thoughts on 6:30? No thoughts?
I'm content with the current schedule, so.
Trustee Lane?
I think at the federal level, there's some action going on called the Sunshine Protection Act. And, you know, if that passed, that has to do with, we would be on daylight savings time all the time. And so then you get into later daylight hours in the winter and darker daylight hours in the morning. You know, it's gonna remain
Right.
darker. So that may or may not take place. I think it's passed through the US House. So just something out there to consider if as you think about changing the time of the meeting, what time of the year it will be, how this could potentially impact it. Just things to think about.
Well, I guess for me, if I get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock at night doesn't matter if it's late or dark, it's still 12 hours into my day. For me. So, yeah, it's like, is anyone interested in moving to 6 or 6:30 besides Lisa and I?
I would have no issue with a little bit of an earlier start time, provided it doesn't adversely affect staff. I mean, I'm used to coming at 7, I have no issue coming at 7, but I don't want to cause any unnecessary negative effect on staff that prepares.
Okay?
Staff is indifferent to a start time, whether it's 6 or 7. I would oppose an 8 o'clock or 7:30 start time. In our meeting yesterday, clerk, treasurer, and supervisor and I meet, kind of review the agenda. Supervisor did indicate that he was comfortable with whatever the board decided if you do decide to make any changes. And as the clerk said, 6 would be pushing it a little bit for him with his work schedule. He could possibly do 6:30, but the administration doesn't have a position on this.
I guess, Treasurer Rogers, you brought this forward.
Yep.
So, I'd like to just understand, your reasoning, pros, cons for bringing it forward. How would you sell your case to do
It just,
whatever hour you are hoping to have them started at?
in the time when I was running and since I've been here, those chairs are mostly always empty. And if it was earlier, we might have people attending more.
I'm skeptical of that because of the fact that a lot of people get off at 6 and then they go home and eat dinner, and then you lose that window of like decompression before sitting in through a community meeting. I know that I like having dinner. My husband gets off at 6. I usually end up having dinner with him, and then I can come here and I'm not a hangry person, and that's good. I know that, that's generally 6 o'clock is dinner time for a lot of people.
Okay?
We've improved our availability based on you can attend virtually
Yeah.
and discuss. So from that respect, you can have dinner while you're attending the meeting and actually participate if you really wanted to.
Right. Just don't talk with your mouth full.
Right.
Okay. Well, it looks like it's probably not gonna change. And we can table it. We don't need to talk about it, whatever. It's not worth the change for half an hour, in my opinion. Because then it's more confusing. If it's on even hour,
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
it's like, oh, wait, is it 6 or 6:30? It's 7. So I guess it stays where it is. Okay. Next on our agenda, Policy Governance 2.0 Global Executive Constraints. Manager Strudel, please.
This item begins on there's a report on page 28 of your agenda packet. This is policy 2.0, global executive constraint. This is an annual review that's to occur in July of each year. The policy wording is one sentence long. Township manager shall not cause or allow any practice, activity, decision, or organizational circumstance which is either unlawful, imprudent, or in violation of commonly accepted public administrative practices and professional ethics. I interpret this policy to indicate that all applicable ordinances, state statutes, federal laws, local ordinances be adhered to by all staff, and that we will all conduct ourselves based on professional ethics that we all have agreed to by joining our different professional societies, associations, and that we would pursue best practices to the greatest extent possible. I think that's a reasonable interpretation based on the policy wording itself. There's the data begins on page 28, carries over to page 29. I'll just highlight a couple of those items. The 2025 audit we had reported to us by Yo and Yo earlier this year. We had the highest opinion that is provided by the auditors, that the financial statements were presented fairly in all material respects. Our water, wastewater staff across the board maintains their professional licensing that's required for both water and wastewater activities, along with distribution, which is the pipes that are in the ground. All those licenses that are required in job descriptions are held by our employees. The water, wastewater operation operates under the both EPA and Eagle regulations, and also the 10 state standards that you've heard referenced in the past. All the ARPA related reporting that was required has been submitted. It's been submitted timely. We're in the process of closing out that that reporting, having spent all the funds and all that. All our FOIA requests are responded to in a very timely fashion within the confines of the statute, either within 5 days, or we can indicate that we're going to take advantage of an extension, and we'll respond within those extension rules. We have begun, and I think some of you have seen it, particularly if you're on things like the Planning Commission or some of those other bodies where it's a little more prevalent, but I talked about publicly identifiable information, trying to redact that in the public-facing documents. We've been doing that for most of the year, and you'll see that in various agenda packets with black boxes and where you can't read it. There's other data points here. I won't go over all of them, but based on this data, my interpretation of the policy, I can confidently say that we are in compliance.
Thank you.
Be happy to hear anybody's thoughts if you think that we're not, and I'd also be happy to hear any questions or comments that you may have. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Comments, questions? Yes.
So reading through that, it kind of turned the light bulb on for me in regards to item number 13. Something for maybe the board or the management team or manager to consider, but Manager Stuhldreher just mentioned about redacting information on public-facing documents and such. And then it got me thinking about when we have, I was thinking maybe we should consider not requiring our public speakers that come to the podium to have to state their exact personal address. You know, I think it'd be appropriate to say, you know, I live in Union Township or something.
Oh.
And I look at that as, you know, a protection of their privacy.
Oh, it's just,
And then it would fit in with what we're trying to do that the manager spoke about redacting public information.
What is the reason for asking for the address? Is there? Is that
I
a
think it's
requirement?
more historical than anything. There's no legal requirement that they provide that information. I know it's often asked by a chair of the meeting, but were to provide opportunity for public comment. The board may be interested in their name and if they reside in the township or not,
Right.
just to have perspective. But there's no requirement that I'm aware of that require an address be given.
My understanding
And
is
so
there's not a
the only-
requirement.
I'm
for-
sorry?
My understanding is there's not a requirement to be a township resident to speak during public comment, correct?
No, there's not.
So then identifying whether you're a resident might be important, but the address, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So,
And we would not
Just a
need to
procedural
adjust
question.
this document for that. It
Just
would be
procedural.
more
Procedure.
the supervisor, chair of the meeting, just go and state your name, please, and if you live in or outside of the township.
And I was speaking from experience because when I was running, if you, I see it's not in here now, it does not say state your name and address, but it was said, and it's always been said, so I did it, so it's not in there, so
Yeah.
it's a good idea, Tim, trustee Lennon, to take that out, not do that. Thank you.
If you want me to tell you what it says. It says like the name is a requirement, the address requirement is generally considered an informal practice. It's for follow-up purposes. Government bodies rarely have a legal right to mandate you to state your address, but it's just for like follow-up purposes. It's like a, yeah, what Mark said.
Okay, thank you.
But regarding the policy review 2.0, I think it's laid out well, and I accept it. And if you want to go through the,
There is an evaluation form if you want to avail yourself of that. You don't have to.
No.
It's on page 30, but
Do we feel we're
We're
in
okay.
compliance?
Yes.
Yeah,
Do we need a motion, don't we?
no.
No.
Just
Oh,
gotta do a little checklist.
well, yeah,
No.
but we feel we're in compliance, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay,
So the next one.
yep, next one is Policy Governance 2.5, Financial Conditions and Activities.
this is a quarterly report due in July covering April, May, June. And I'll read the top line of the policy. With respect to the actual ongoing financial condition and activities, the township management team shall not cause or allow the development of fiscal jeopardy or a material deviation of actual expenditures from board established ends policies. There are, by my count, 11 sub-policies under this. I'm not going to go through those. I interpret this policy to indicate that there will be no expenditures made or incurred that exceed the budget for the current year unless it's of an emergency nature, and those limitations are outlined in policy 2.5.6, and that the manager shall not make a single purchase or commitment unless, of course, it falls under 2.5.6, of greater than $20,000, or inform the board of purchases over $10,000. I also interpret this policy to mean that tax payments to other governmental entities are to be paid when due by statute. Payroll reporting, tax withholdings, accounts payable invoices are all to be processed and ready for board approval as soon as possible. I think this is a reasonable interpretation of this policy. When the board approves the budget, that's at the policy level, and then it's left to the management team to operate within those guidelines that you all have established, and it then helps perpetuate this idea that the governing body act is a function as a policy-making body and not get too far into the weeds. I've attached a BS&A financial report to this memo. In addition to that numerical information, I can state that all our expenditures support to one degree or another all the global ends policies. We have not used any long-term general fund reserves in several years. We usually add to those reserves. Although, and as I stated a few minutes ago, you are starting to see where we are assigning or committing fund balance to certain projects or expenses that the board has agreed to. So by assigning or committing them, it's helping us not spend the money twice. All payrolls paid on time, all the taxes and third-party administrators related to benefits, they were all paid on time. There were 2 reports that I made to the board during the quarter for purchases that were between $10,000 and $20,000. One was a change order related to J.R. Heineman contract for the Drinking Water State Revolving Loan Fund project. I've noted that here in the data, as well as I approved a $12,000 gearbox rebuild for an aerator at the wastewater treatment plant. The numerical data begins on page 23. I've given, for the general fund, all our various revenue line items are listed here.
I'm sorry, page 33 maybe? 33. Yep, thank you. Yep, I thought you said 23.
And then when we get onto the expenditure side within the general fund, we are providing these from a functional perspective. We had some discussion of that several meetings ago, where it's been highlighted. The general government is a function as defined by the state, and all those departments above that line are what's considered general government. And then you have various other functions: public safety, public works, community and economic development, recreation and culture. Those are all functions. So we're moving away from all the line item detail that used to be provided in these reports. That information is available if anybody wants it. And we have similar reports for all the funds: fire fund, special assessment fund, east-west fund, sewer fund, water fund, etc. So based on the policy language, I can confidently again state that we are in compliance with policy 2.5. Be happy to answer any questions anyone may have.
Having spent a fair amount of time cutting brush this week, I understand the challenges of being in the weeds. And I'm curious to know, Manager Stuhldreher, are we in the right neighborhood with these provisions of the $20,000 and the $10,000 marks? Are those consistent as expenses increase?
I would say we are. It's just been, I think we adjusted those amounts maybe 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So they're fairly current. And I have, and they used to be more than half smaller. And that was presenting some problems. At these levels, it's not particularly, from my perspective anyways, because the policy language does require some reporting to the board for these purchases that I'm authorized to make,
Mm-hmm.
between 10 and 20. There were 2 in the quarter. It's not onerous for me, and I don't think it's overloading your inboxes.
Okay.
And so I think we're in a good spot.
Great. Thank you.
Where did we make the adjustment to our policy about that you could approve getting a new water main, or whatever, not the main, the water meter, or the house, they were here. They lost a part on the water and it froze and broke, and
Oh,
where you could approve that without having to bring it to us. Where was that? It's a different policy.
We are in the process, when that item was addressed a
Yep.
few meetings ago, I had indicated that we were looking at trying to craft some language for the governance policy document that would provide the administration with some authorities so that these things wouldn't come to the board as often.
Sure.
They don't come very often now, but,
Right.
And we're working on that.
Okay.
I think of whether or not we get it done in time, because the language I need to be careful with this particular
Certainly.
language.
Yep.
And right now it's slotted for the second meeting in August that we're hoping to have some policy
Okay.
wording for the board.
Thank you. Do you all feel, you've read this, do you feel like, maybe not every number, but do you feel we're in compliance with this?
Yeah.
Yes?
Mm-hmm.
All in favor of accepting? We don't do that?
You just go to the next one.
Go to the next one, okay. Newbie here.
I just mentioned that from my perspective. Through our manager's tenure, I believe his history demonstrates that he's followed this policy very closely and does a nice job with it.
Item F is Policy Governance 2.6.9 Investment Quarterly Report. Managers to retire.
Excuse me. Thank you. This report begins on page 37 of your agenda packet. This is a new report. You may recall a couple meetings ago, maybe 2 months ago, the board approved an updated investment policy.
Mm-hmm.
That policy requires quarterly reporting to the board, quarterly investment reporting to the board. This falls under policy 2.6, which states that township management shall not allow corporate assets to be unprotected, inadequately maintained, or unnecessarily risked. There is a sub-policy under that, 2.6.9, which goes on to say investments that the management team or the manager shall not invest or hold operating capital in insecure instruments, including uninsured checking accounts and bonds of less than AA rating at any time, or in non-interest bearing accounts, except where necessary to facilitate ease in operational transactions and in accordance with the investment policy dated May 2026.
Okay.
So it must have been May when we
Yep.
did this. That policy, which is an appendix of governance policy now, states that there will be quarterly reporting. So this is new. It'll start coming to you on a quarterly basis. I interpret this policy to require that township investments remain in authorized financial institutions and investment vehicles as permitted under both the township investment policy and applicable state law, which is Public Act 20 primarily. That we should be maintaining appropriate levels of federal deposit insurance, corporation insurance, be invested only in securities or financial instruments that meet or exceed the minimum credit rating requirements that are established within that investment policy, and the policy speaks to that, and avoid non-interest bearing accounts except where operationally necessary for day-to-day banking activities, and that this investment activity be reviewed quarterly to ensure that we remain compliant primarily with the investment policy itself. I think this is a reasonable, that this is a reasonable interpretation of the policy, such that Union Township will only, invest in. We're investing public funds to begin with. So the things that we pay attention to are safety, liquidity, and rate of return, generally in that order. And at the same time, we need to meet daily cash flow requirements, so there will be some idle cash sitting around. The investment policy establishes standards designed to safeguard these public funds. We're going to be utilizing highly rated, low-risk financial institutions in our day-to-day activity and in the securities that we buy and sell. The policy requires quarterly monitoring so that the board can be comfortable that our idle funds, which are significant at any point in time, are appropriately being invested. We want to have a little bit of interest earnings, but we certainly don't want to risk principal. Data is the investment report that begins on page 39 of your agenda packet. It's an investment report, June 30th, 2026. Summarizing the portfolio, I can state that all investments were made in accordance with Governance Policy 2.6.9, the investment policy dated May of 2026, and Public Act 20 of 1943. We have $28.6 million invested, if you will, at any given point in time, or at least as of June 30th in this case. There's an average weighted yield on these investments at 3.01% as of June 30th. And the demand deposits, which are essentially checking accounts, they're readily available to meet our cash flow needs, and both the insured cash sweep accounts and the Michigan class, which I spoke to as an allowable investment when we adopted the policy, are both high yield relatively and liquid. So our cash flow and diversification pieces of the portfolio requirements are being met. There's portfolio detail both by investment type in your report. That's reproduced as a pie graph in your report. We have the portfolio by financial institution listed here: Isabella Bank, Isabella Community Credit Union, the Michigan class, and then insured cash sweep accounts are outlined here. We also have the portfolio broken down by fund so that we can make sure the interest earnings follows the principal: general fund, fire fund, etc. And then we have a listing of our certificates of deposit. They're all with Isabella Bank currently. And then the last page of the report, on page 41 of your agenda packet, gets into investment earnings for the quarter. For the quarter, there was $217,000 of interest earned across the various, across the organization, and those interest earnings were allocated by fund, also listed on this page. This is a new report for you. You've never seen a report like this before, so I'm spending a little time on it. It's under development. I think it's a very good start. I'd like to have a few more pie graphs and pictures instead of all the numbers, but we'll get there. So I don't want to just gloss over this because it is new for you. And I'd be happy to answer any questions or any feedback that you might have regarding the contents in the presentation of the report. So thank you.
Thank you. Questions? It's pretty well laid out.
Yeah, it's,
I like
Yeah.
this.
it's nice. It's got a chart. I like
Yeah.
the chart.
I know.
Okay.
Big fan of the graph.
And the numbers seem to
Yeah.
line
Yeah.
up and match at the appropriate spots.
Moving on.
Looks good.
We hope for at least that.
Yep.
Collins and Rosefoot.
It's very nice to see it all laid out and
Yeah.
where all the little pieces where everything's invested. It's helpful.
That brings us to item G, Policy Governance 4.4 Township Manager Performance. We do this annually. It's just discussed with Supervisor Melke that we would read this through and put some thoughts to it. There's a form in here where you can start filling out. So second meeting in August, I believe, we'll be discussing more. So I just want to bring it to your attention. And I apologize for the two people that are in our audience tonight. At the beginning of the meeting, I should have said thank you for attending. But that brings us to extended public comment, restricted to 5 minutes regarding any issue. If you'd like to speak, The microphone's right there? No?
Just here to visit, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Tara?
I have one person online.
No hands raised? Okay. That brings us to manager comments.
I have none this evening, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Final board member comments. Start with you, James, Trustee
I am
Thering.
good. Thank you.
Okay,
I have one. 9-day early voting starts this Saturday. Union Township, Mount Pleasant, the city of Mount Pleasant will be at the Central Michigan University Student Activity Center, room 204. The parking lot is 62W. The rest of Isabella County will be at the Commission on Aging. I believe it's the same hours, 8 to 4. But, so if you want to vote early, 8 to 4, you can do that, or you can just come on election day
okay.
on the 4th.
Thank you. Trustee Oliver?
Nothing today?
Trustee Lanning?
All set, thank you.
Trustee Lay?
I'm good.
I have one question. Would anyone object to the administration providing 2 versions of the 2027 meeting date schedule? Just to look at? Anyone object to that?
No.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to adjournment. Meeting adjourned
Support.
8:46.
Oh, manager
What?
comment.
Need support for them.
Manager,
we did it.
he didn't have any.
Oh,
Yeah, nothing.
I'm like, oh.
Wow.